Welcome back to Until Saturday. I'm Ari Wasserman, joined by Max Olson and Dave Hubben for the best show of the week in this feed, or quickly becoming my favorite show, the Sunday Sound Off Show. We get some time to digest what happened throughout the hectic day that is Saturday every week, and we get to hear from you, which is the best part. I got to say that it warms my heart that you guys have been participating with it. I think it's great for the show and the listeners to be involved in it and to have your voices prominently displayed, because we know that without you and your support and your continued listenership that this show wouldn't be anything. So we encourage you to continue to send these in, and we're going to keep playing them. We're going to discuss them, and it makes me feel like you guys are a part of the show because you are a big part of it. Guys, it's been a pretty hectic weekend. We are all three on the road. Both of you guys got to hang out, which was a little bit jealous out in Boulder. Had a pretty good time. I was solo in
we
Tuscaloosa,
gave Max his
but
first Boulder experience.
yeah, Max and I are just finished up wrapping up a month-long trip together of the official visit on YouTube, presented by or supported by StubHub, which is just our diners, drive-ins, and dives take on college campuses. And we thought maybe there was a chance we were going to go to Boulder. We didn't go the first go of it in the first season. But Max, do we mess up by not going?
I think Boulder certainly would have fit with what we were trying to do with the official visit. Yeah, I think it was definitely it was on our short list and definitely could have been one of the five. And I think it would be a good one, man. I had never been there, not just never been around CU, but just never even stopped in. And it's gorgeous, man. It's a really cool place to watch a game. David and I were walking around on Friday in Pearl District, right, David? Like the
Pearl Street Mall, yeah.
Pearl Street Mall, yeah. That's a great place to spend a weekend, and you can tell by my sunburn that David and I had great seats for this game. Amazing seats. The sun was right in our face for the whole first half, and I forgot sunscreen. But man, wild experience, right, Dave?
Yeah, if you guys have never been to Boulder, I hadn't before this year and the Dion Circus. I hadn't been in about 10 years, but man, the whole campus sits at the foot of the Flatirons, which is tower over the whole city, the whole campus, and it's gorgeous. It's very cool. It's very European. It's like a cool place. It's just a very unique college town that feels like a college town. But you're still, 40 minutes away from Denver, a pretty major metro. So those are kind of my favorite types of college towns, where you can get a college town feel, but still be pretty close to a big place in a pro sports city.
Ari, how many towns did you see this weekend?
I drove to Tuscaloosa from Dallas, and I saw Shreveport. I had a lunch in Jackson. I saw Tuscaloosa, and I saw Birmingham, and then I'm running it back here. After this, I might go hit the tables tonight. We'll see what happens. Actually, I think after right, but
that's not a night. We all know.
Yeah. Who knows? We'll see. If I was up pretty late on Saturday night, but it is not the same type of thing where you guys get to see mountains. Whenever I see mountains towering over a stadium or mountain territory, maybe it's just because where I grew up has mountains, but I just get kind of jealous. And then you two were together too. But obviously, there's a lot to discuss from that game. Of course, we have some more serious news that we have to at least touch on this episode at Michigan State, and we'll get into that here shortly. And then, of course, we'll dive into the questions, and hopefully you'll make us laugh as much as you did a week ago. So first, I just wanted to, again, welcome you to the Sunday Sound Off on the Until Saturday feed. Be sure to follow the podcast on Apple, wherever you listen to your podcast. Drop us a 5-star review and leave a question with that review. And we will answer it on the show if it's a 5-star. Subscribe to the Until Saturday YouTube page. If you are here watching it live now, we appreciate you. If you're getting this in podcast form, the link to the YouTube page can be found in the show's description. And of course, I have to memorize this phone number eventually, but the voicemail line, Until Saturday, 316-462-9852. That's 316-462-9852. You can call it, leave a voicemail. You can text it. For questions too, we will lean on the voicemails because I think it sounds more authentic and real when your guys' voices come through, and hopefully we have some more impressions in our future. So Dave, let me kick it to you. Can you break down the serious situation here at Michigan State for us? And let's just cover this a little bit before we get into the show.
Yeah, so last night USA Today dropped a very in-depth report where they had interviewed Brenda Tracy, who has gained prominence in the last decade as a a champion to help get rid of sexual misconduct on college campuses. Basically, that she was alleging that she had been sexually harassed, as well as some sexual misconduct by Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker. It's a pretty in-depth report. I would suggest you read it. It's pretty detailed. It details a lot of the Michigan State investigation. And then earlier today, Michigan State put him on leave pending a Title IX hearing on October 5th. And so for now, Harlan Bennett will be acting head coach. Mark Antonio is going to come back and work in sort of an assistant, be around and help out capacity. And it's a messy story. It's a shocking story. And it's one that is going to spawn a lot of conversation eventually. I think right now, as we sort of still wait for kind of all of the facts to come out, it's important to kind of stay grounded in that. But there's not a lot of stories that literally sort of leave me just flabbergasted, and I think this was one of them.
Yeah, I couldn't believe just open that up. I think it was probably about midnight local time for us last night, right? And honestly, credit to Kenny Jacoby from USA Today, who has been an excellent investigative reporter for them over the past few years, especially in college athletics. This was, it's worth pointing out, this is not a new revelation to Michigan State in any way. This was submitted by Brenda Tracy back in December, and so it's been a long and complicated process since then. Hearing coming up here next month, but it certainly does raise questions about Mel Tucker coaching the first 2 games for Michigan State.
Yes.
Why does the punishment get handed down today when this is something that they were aware of but the public wasn't?
Yeah, I believe they got the report that essentially all of the details that were in the USA Today report, they got July 25th. Today at their press conference, Michigan State Athletic Director Alan Haller was asked kind of about why now. And his answer was interim measures were in place, and those interim measures have been updated. Initially, there was no contact with the complainants, and then also increased oversight from me of the program, but then also the coach. So it's an ongoing process, and we update those interim measures as we receive information. I don't see a lot of coherent thought in any of those words.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't hear a coherent answer for why because I'll be honest, when I read this, I said, he's going to be fired by Monday. You can't continue on with him. And I don't understand how an administration can see those same details. And we're here, 8 weeks, six weeks since they got those. And he's still your head coach until it goes public. And then all of a sudden you react and suspend him and clearly start heading down the track to fire him and figuring out if you can fire him for cause and get out of that $80 million contract. You're clearly headed down that track less than 24 hours after it goes public. So it's from the beyond the issue with Mel Tucker, the administration has a lot of questions.
And you never want, I'm certainly not trying to say apples to apples by any means here. You never want to compare these things, but it does remind you a little bit of Northwestern where, it does seem like once the public kind of gets a hold of the information, then there's a different momentum to that stuff. And it's hard to envision a scenario. Obviously there's a lot of facts to sort out, but it's hard to envision a scenario where Michigan State can move forward with Mel Tucker.
Yeah, it's just one of those scenarios too, I guess, like you guys said, well put, that you kind of wait and let the dust settle a little bit, see how the university handles it. But of course, as the information continues to come out, you start to understand how, or try to understand how, or hold people accountable for the way that it was handled, after the fact too. And of course, it's just another a reminder of the tremendous responsibility that you have as a head coach, not just Mel Tucker, but everybody, in terms of acting appropriately and all the things that, go in place with being in that position. So certainly worth a discussion. We'll probably have more discussions about it this week and in the near future as more details come out, but we thought it was important to acknowledge that before we get into the voicemails and the fun. So thanks guys for indulging us on that. And let's get to it. What do you say?
Let's do it.
All right.
What's up, Ari? My name's Jesse from Iowa City, Iowa. Is there something wrong with the SEC? They are 3-6 against Power 5 teams so far this year, and those 3 wins are a horrible Virginia team, Mississippi State beating Arizona in overtime, and freaking Cal. Is there something wrong with the SEC? I know stars matter and all that, but 3-6, and the 3 wins were against bad teams, and 2 of them were really down to the wire. Thank you.
I know stars matter and all. Had to get that jab in there, huh, Jesse? Well, it is interesting to me because it is bizarro land in the final year of the Pac-12, but the Pac-12 seems to be the deepest, most fun league, and they have all their powers that were supposed to be interesting teams this year intact with 2-0 records. And of course, let's just go through it. Georgia is 2-0, 45-3 win over Ball State. I don't think that we're going to have very many conversations about Georgia this year in terms of them being a disappointment, because I don't think they play a ranked team till November at this rate. And it's only getting worse. If they don't make the playoff this year, then something went way off the rails there. I was at the Alabama game. Texas handled their business. I thought they physically dominated them for a large portion of that game and probably could have won by more. So you have the Hallmark program, or one of the 2 Hallmark programs of that conference, losing for the first time in double digits in over a decade, I think, at their home floor or home field. LSU obviously has their loss to Florida State. Ole Miss was struggling with Tulane. Texas A&M got their doors blown off by Miami. Wake Forest beat Vandy. The list goes on. We don't have to even go down the list of what's going on in Florida.
One.
Yeah, Ole Miss dodged one, and Michael Pratt didn't play. So like that,
and they were still struggling early.
Tulane was playing with their backup quarterback, and I would mention Florida, but I don't want Dave to grow hair and then that hair catch on fire. So there's a lot to talk about. But guys, what is your thought process of why the SEC is off to a slow start this year?
I mean, obviously, NIL's ruining the sport. The SEC's just got to catch up.
It's the only explanation, I think. Yeah,
they got to do something to get those collectives humming, right? Right.
If they could just get some more revenue going in the SEC, hopefully they could catch up.
Yeah, I thought there was a pretty good explanation last night too, of just like you came into the year and you have the 2 big time teams, or the 3 big time teams, all going through transitional situations with their quarterbacks. Obviously, Georgia's doing it too. They haven't played anybody who can test them yet, but the thing that I think is most interesting about this whole thing is that if Alabama beats Texas and you've got Georgia and Alabama sitting at 2-0, you probably have a different viewpoint of the conference from top to bottom, because when you're teams that are competing for national championships are still, kind of in Death Star mode, it kind of changes things a little bit. I do think that maybe this bleeds into a little bit of an Alabama discussion. We had a little bit of that on Saturday night after the games, but the question that I have more than anything is with Alabama, what's going on with the quarterback development, and how do you have all these recruits on your team and not have a viable game-breaking option at the skill positions like that?
Yeah, I think when you look at the SEC as a whole, I mean, we talked about it on the quarterback show coming into the season, and I started off the show saying, woof, this is a rough year for SEC quarterbacks. And there's a lot of things that go into a lot, but sometimes it might just be that simple. The SEC doesn't have great quarterbacks, and as a result, we're seeing them not have a ton of great teams. Meanwhile, the Pac-12 has a ton of continuity, a ton of star power, and it's just like, deep analysis here, but like, why did Alabama lose? They didn't have great quarterback play. Okay. I don't know that Texas had great quarterback play, but they had good quarterback play. Right. And you look around the SEC and I don't see a lot of game breakers, a ton of impact players playing quarterback. And you look in the Pac-12, who is 19-3, and I see them everywhere. And I think sometimes it might just be that simple.
I looked this up. So last year, SEC versus Power 5, not counting bowl games, right? Just regular season. There's 15 games. You want to guess what the SEC's record was in the 15 games?
13-2.
Melvin?
I'm going to say 11-4.
10-5. 10-5.
All right.
But the 5 were legitimately good teams. 2 of them lost to Florida State. Auburn lost to Penn State. Missouri got whooped by K-State. And then, I believe there was a loss to Wake Forest as well. So at least defensible last year.
Yeah. I mean, LSU is the one that jumps out. I know Florida State's good, but LSU got punked. And then, I think Texas is just good, but Alabama losing on its home field is embarrassing. And we we dug into that last night. A&M is pretty. There's just a lot of losses that aren't just losses. They're like they make you perk up and say like, what's going on there? Like A&M, you have to look at the wholesale program after a loss like that and say like, what's wrong with us? It's not just like, well, like Texas, Bama to some degree, we knew it was wrong with Bama, but those are two good teams going head to head. Texas wins that game. I don't come away from that game saying like Alabama's screwed. I think with all my skepticism about Alabama coming into the season, I have said, chill on the dynasty. I think Bama is one quarterback recruit away from being fine again. And, I don't know that guy is on campus right now, but we'll see.
They certainly have recruited quite a few.
Yes. And maybe this is something that needs to be written about tonight even. But why is that person not on the team right now? Is it misevaluation? Is it poor development? Is it a combination of both? With the way that they have recruited the position, you would think that one of the 4 or 5 dudes that are in that room would be, it doesn't have to turn into Bryce Young overnight, but would be somebody that you can go, hey, this guy's got it. And it might take some time for him to kind of grow in within himself to reach that point. But it's like you watch the Jalen Milroe game performance in the Texas game, and I think that you have a clear and identifiable plan to stop him if you're a team that kind of has the same talent. Like it's not going to be enough for most of the teams that they play still this year, and I still think that's probably a 10, at least a 9-win team at worst. But when they start getting on the field with Georgia and LSU and some of those teams that can go athlete for them, at least with the top 22 players that are on the field, you stop the guy. You rush him. You make him feel uncomfortable in the pocket. Spy him so he can't run around a little bit and make him throw it. And next thing you know, it's like every single play was the same last night.
I thought it was interesting too, Ari, last night. I'm sure you noticed, like Texas trusted a freshman linebacker in Anthony Hill to play the spy role because it wasn't really that complicated. Like you just
wasn't.
You just got to play that space. Yeah.
I mean, I think, I don't think it's a recruiting issue, and I'm not even sure it's a development issue. It's probably evaluation. But, I remember Ty Simpson. I mean, I live out here in Tennessee. Ty Simpson lived about an hour away from me, and they were talking about him like a generational type talent. Tennessee was crushed when they lost him, and they lost him out of their own backyard in the middle of that coaching transition. And you don't hear Ty Simpson's name at all. Tyler Buckner, we can sort of, it's whatever. And maybe, Max, I might consult you, our portal authority out here. Might have been a guy out there that Alabama might have been sniffing around and didn't get. He might be helping them. But so I'm going to say evaluation, and the turnover at coordinator doesn't help. I think there is there's an offensive line problem. I thought Alabama was going to move on from Eric Wolford after last season. They did not. They stuck with him. So it's a lot of things, but they don't have the offensive line to run the kind of offense that would make Jalen Milroe look as good as he can.
But do they have the offensive skill talent to go to somebody else?
I don't know that last night going to another quarterback would have helped or changed the outcome. I don't believe that.
Do you think that are just your perspective being there, watching it with your own 2 eyes, if you plug Sam Hartman into that game, does Alabama win? I mean, that's not a lock, right?
No. Yeah. I was actually leaning towards no on that one because the thing that, I was thinking like in the third quarter before Alabama, got a few drives there and put some pressure on Texas heading into the final quarter of the game. Like I was on high alert for a quarterback change. And I thought, well, this isn't working. Whatever they're doing offensively isn't going to happen. It's not going to be enough to win the game. Are they going to bring in Buckner to see if he can throw it around a little bit more effectively? And then I caught myself thinking, like, do you have the offensive line to protect a guy that might not be 100% comfortable? Do you have the receiver that can go up and get a 50-50 ball? Jace McClellan, I think, rushed for less than 70 yards last night. They tried the murder ball thing, and even that wasn't working. So I don't know if the sole blame goes on poor quarterback play. But I think that your offense has to be designed around a certain type of player. And I've covered teams in the past that have had 2 very good quarterbacks that were very different styles, and they struggled immensely to try to figure out how to use them when they were both in the game because they didn't know how to call the game differently. Mm-hmm. So Jason
got that
Spangler
room
here.
is like kind of in this transitional spot too, where Jalen Miller was recruited by Steve Sarkisian, flipped from Texas right after they got Quinn Ewers. You've got Simpson and Lonergan recruited, I believe, mostly by Bill O'Brien, right?
Yep.
I believe so.
And then you've got Tommy Rees coming in, inheriting these guys, going through spring with them, trying to figure out how do they fit what he does. Then he brings in Tyler Buckner, his guy. Obviously, he's landed a commit in Julian Sand, but it's sort of like, I don't know. You kind of wonder, it's like, truth serum on Tommy Rees. Like, what does he think of his room?
I think we saw it in his face in the booth last night.
that was pain.
I think we saw what he thought.
I was wondering if we were going to see like the F-bombing kind of shot we've seen before from Tommy Rees at Notre Dame. That was a very depressing shot of him up in the box.
That was seriously, the Alabama murder ball is going to work against most teams. It's not. I didn't think it was going to work against Texas. It's not going to work against LSU's front. It's not going to work against Georgia, and it might be, it might not be enough against maybe a team or two. But it's going to work against most of the SEC, I think. Their offensive line is good enough to do that. But when they go up against these teams, and when you're playing at Alabama and you have the standard that Alabama does, where if you don't make the playoff, the sky is falling, it's not enough to get you there. And I think, all of our perspective reads on the situation when they bring in Tyler Buckner, where it's like, uh-oh. That Tyler Buckner, not exactly a world beater. All of those alarm bells, I think, were pretty valid and were legitimized in what we saw against a Texas team that, I think is very good, but I don't think is world beaters. So,
What
Bama's
do you
going to
think,
play some
Max?
world beaters.
I want to hear what
He's
you
not going to
think,
be
Max.
sold on Texas till they're 12-0, though. I think that's kind of where he's at.
Fair.
But Max, what was you've spent a lot of time, you used to live in Austin, covered this team for a long time. Watching that game last night, where was your head at in terms of what you saw there and what your expectations were for this team?
Offensive side, I thought pretty masterful. I mean, kind of I wouldn't say masterpiece, but pretty masterful.
Schematically, it was. I'm with you.
Yeah. And I think that you saw, that's as good as it's been with Sark in terms of just we are maximizing all the firepower we've got here, minimizing mistakes, no turnovers from Ewers. I believe no sacks from Ewers, right?
Yeah,
no sacks.
Crazy. So as good of an offensive, 34 points, right? It wasn't 50, but like as good of an offensive performance in that setting as you could possibly ask for. And Ari, you saw it, like defensively, like shoot, man, they're physical now. They're
like,
fast.
Is their defensive
they run
line
to the ball.
elite?
Like they just do their job,
Yeah. The thing that is interesting to me, and I've read a lot of comments because some teams have, played some games against overmatched opponents and kind of look like they're going through the motions. And then you've seen some other teams like Florida State, for instance, that have played with a passion and they fly to the football. And there's like an athleticism there that is coupled with that passion that makes you feel like something's bigger there. And I thought that we got that from Texas, and it's like there's a lot of X's and O's things that you can break down from the Texas game. I think the fact that they didn't allow a single sack in that game was incredible, considering what we know about that Alabama defense. And I thought that the thing about the offensive game plan that was so masterful is that nothing seemed overly complicated. You had a lot of passes into the flats and short, intermediate routes to the sideline. Quinn Ewers was comfortable. They knew exactly when to take the shots, and it just didn't seem like things were it was surgical, but it wasn't hard. So for me, if they end up losing to a team that David is expecting them to lose, it's just inexplicable to me. So I think that this year is different. I hope to not be proven wrong. And, this is the first time that Texas has beaten a top 5 team in the preseason since 2005. And I think that turned out pretty well for them. So we'll see how it goes. But a lot on the docket here. Let's get to the next question.
Hey, y'all. My name's Logan. I'm calling from Tuscaloosa. Ari, I know you were at the game yesterday. Obviously, an insane atmosphere. Super disappointing from our end. But I'm wondering what you think, Saban should have done in terms of potentially switching to one of the other QBs. Obviously they kept rolling with Milroe, and it obviously didn't work out. Easy to, say it in hindsight, but just wondering if you had any insight on that. Thanks. A big fan of the show.
I'm still the Jalen Milroe of podcast hosts, and our producer sent me a message in the middle of it saying we have a broader talent discussion. We have a Bama question that we could segue into. Do we cover it? Like, I don't know. Do you want to go back? Well, the thing about Milrow
That's
is,
how you get
would you have-
stuff,
would you-
Ari, when you're just slow
All right,
on the
but like
reads,
Ari,
you know?
Yeah.
binary yes or no. Would you have given a shot to Buckner or Simpson in that game?
yes, probably. I would have tried it.
I think I would have tried it too.
What was
I mean, because I knew that what they had wasn't going to win it. And if you know that, then what do you have to
that's
lose?
a good way to say it, Ari. I didn't have a lot of confidence. Like, it felt to me like if Bama was going to win that game, then Milrow was going to have to do some stuff we've never seen him do before, and that's not a good place to be.
I mean, it kind of turned into like, can we chuck it? Can we chuck our way out of this a little bit? You know what I mean? He throws a nice deep ball, but I'm
Yeah.
You know, when
curious,
he hit
Ari,
that
like
50-yard touchdown pass, I was like,
That was a dime.
That was-
Shout
I
out
was like,
to
that was
Milrow.
like, that was a laser, you know?
It was.
And,
what,
you know,
what
I just
was?
think that,
Sorry, I was going to ask Ari, just like
Yeah.
for in the press box there, what was the vibe? Like people expecting him to get pulled? People, was there some like warm up moments with any of the other like what was the scene there in terms of the quarterback situation?
okay, so I sit next to Richard Johnson from SI.
My guy,
Harry,
shout out.
we had Matt Fortuna, our old colleague, a few seats down, a few people above me. And when Alabama took the lead at the end of the third quarter, it was kind of like that. You guys have seen the movie Rounders?
Yes.
You know,
Like, literally
KJB
since high school.
hanging around. And like, it's like, because I thought Texas kicked their ass for 3 quarters and then we're losing going into the fourth. So, you know, at that
But you
point,
think Nick Saban's just sitting down there eating Oreos?
yeah, like I wish I was sitting down there eating Oreos. But it looked like people were more worried about Texasing than they were about Alabama's quarterback situation because, you know, the game was very close and Alabama was winning at the beginning of the fourth quarter. And the last 7 minutes of the game was just, and that's another thing that we have to say about Texas that we didn't say on the podcast yet today or last night, which is 7 minutes left in the game and they just ran it down Alabama's throat until the game was over. Like, that's the most satisfying way probably for a coach to win a football game. So I don't know if you were going to make the change, the timing would have been interesting because they were still down only a score for the majority of the third quarter. Then they took the lead going into the fourth, and it's like, then what, are you going to put Buckner in with 9 minutes left? Like, that's the thing is, like, I don't know if the right timing even presented itself. I think there was more anticipation that Texas was going to lose, and if they would have lost that game, I just would have gone home. Like what is it?
Well, that's not been the issue for Texas, is getting in these fist fights with the big boys and coughing them up. We haven't seen that many times with Texas. When they show up, it seems like they finish the job more often than not. I mean, they did beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl like 3 years ago. Like, it's not like they haven't had any shining moments. Well, I think for me, when you look at the QBs, though, I'm kind of surprised they didn't have anything packaged in to make Texas have to do a lot of different things defensively. They don't have to make a panic change, but you say, we want to play 2 guys. You know, we want to get them in and try some stuff and kind of see, and maybe we catch this instead of saying, oh, no, it's not working. You know, I'm looking around. Do I want to go Buckner? Do I want to go Simpson? I'm surprised they didn't have something prepared to go in there.
And I think the most untold story of this game, because the quarterbacks are always going to get the attention, but have you guys looked at the box score yet? Like, do you know the stats, or can I quiz you? Oh, you have it up there. Okay. If I would have told you that Jalen Milrow and Jace McClellan would have both combined to rush for less than 90 yards in that game, would you have just been blown away? Like, I just feel like the offensive line and the defensive line.
They tried a lot.
Yeah, they tried. They did. They tried quite a bit. And I think that part of the main idea of my Texas to the playoff prediction was the lines. And I feel like that to me was, you know, of course we have Quinn Ewers showing up and he threw a few beautiful passes, you know, off platform throws that, you know, I don't know that a lot of other quarterbacks in his position could make. I think you reminded people the natural skill set that he has that got him the recruiting ranking that people like to mock. But if Texas was going to win big this year, not just win the Big 12, but win big enough to make the playoff, I thought it was going to start up front on both sides. And if you don't allow Alabama to sack you and you hold those 2 guys, the murder ball 1-2 punch to less than 90 yards on a ton of attempts, like, all the other stuff's going to fall into place. You've got skill all over the place on offense, and their defense, you know, really came to play. So I think that Texas passed every identifiable test that they could have last night. And the last test, which I wrote in the column, would be don't screw it off against a team that isn't very good. And that's your whole thing. But I hope for their sake, because they seem like a bunch of good kids. I mean, they had a lot of fun on the field after they celebrated that win like they just won the Big 12 or something. Like that was an ongoing celebration.
So. I have no problem with that.
It kind of felt like it was just like a program defining turning moment to me. But yeah, so we'll see. We got a KU fan here, Jason Spangler. I wish I was like sophisticated enough to have like an initial then a period on my byline, like A. Jonathan Wasserman, because that's my middle name.
It's not bad. Have you ever read a book, Ari? I'm gonna
Jonathan Wasserman. It sounds like I have a doctorate in something. Said that watch out for Jalen Daniels. He's a legit quarterback, and absolutely would not be surprised if Kansas pulls an upset on somebody this year with that talent. So, and my producer Camelina here just said I'd be Dr. Grabass, which that's
print the business card. I like it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry for answering your question before you got it, but I'm happy that we were able to get to it. All right, next one.
Yeah.
Hi, Until Saturday, friends. My name is Sam, and if I sound sad, it's because I'm a Nebraska fan, and it's just a hard existence right now. And I wanted to call in to get your thoughts. Coming in, I think most Nebraska fans knew there was a chance that this thing wasn't going to work, that it was going to be a Matt Rule year one, but maybe with the portal that things were going to be different. But they're not. And I think that there's been maybe a critical error with the evaluation of Jeff Sims. And I want to believe that this thing is going to get turned around, but I'm just tired. I'm just fatigued and looking for some consolation, and I don't know if I'm going to find it here. Cheers to you guys. Congrats to those teams who are indeed back, and maybe one day we can join you.
I legitimately feel bad for Nebraska fans while I'm watching them play football, and that's not like not a pity thing. It's just I'm a big odds guy. Like, for instance, I have 4 fantasy football teams, and I didn't score a single touchdown in any of them. Like, what are the odds
That's
of that?
hard to do.
That's and like that is to me. I
got to check how my team's doing against Evan tonight. Let's see.
Yeah.
We're doing good.
But
Yeah,
the thing
Max
that
is taking care of it.
Sam brought up, and I'll kick it to you here in a second, Max, is that if I go down the list of just plays watching it from my hotel room, the fumble that hit a player in motion, the turnovers, the offsides on 3rd and 5. It's just like this countless collection of, for lack of a better term, grab ass plays that seem unlucky, but continually happen all the time. And the question I have is that a culture thing that is inherent in some of the players that were held over from the previous regime that Matt Rule has to eradicate? Or is Matt Rule complicit in not eradicating it himself as the head coach? Because I thought it might be a tough year for Nebraska, but at the very least, we'd get to watch this team play without it continually, I don't want to even say shooting itself in the foot. I would say like chopping its legs off.
Looking competent, which they don't through 2 weeks.
It's not even competence. It's like terrible. It's like terrible execution, freak plays that get described as bad luck, but actually are just them misperforming. Like, what's your take on this whole thing, Max?
Yeah, I mean, just watching it live on site, it always kind of feels like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back with that. So, I mean, there are positives from the first 2 games. There are things that even Shedeur Sanders said, like, man, Tony White did a great job with the defense. There were some moments where Nebraska got the kind of game they wanted, especially in the first half. But those dumb things just kind of undo all of it, right? I mean, they just spoil whatever good things you're trying to build toward. And I don't think this is going to be like a 2-10, 3-9 kind of year one for Matt Rule. I think they'll probably be better in November than they are today. But, I think this coaching staff probably kind of really wanted to look at this very optimistically and really believe in these guys and try to inject some confidence into them and see the best in them. And I think through the first 2 games, I mean, you kind of got a pretty clear example of, here's why Nebraska has another new coaching staff, right? Here's why this just hasn't been working. And obviously there's a lot of scrutiny on Jeff Sims and the OC. Marcus Satterfield, and you totally get that. Certainly, the turnovers make it impossible to be competitive in these games. But I mean, Dave and I were talking about this just throughout the game. Like, I think Deion Sanders had a pretty good feel when he was doing all this portal building at Colorado that, like, in his words, like, he needed to go get some dogs and needed to get some go-getters. And you saw a bunch of them on Saturday, and I don't really see a lot of them with Nebraska. I just don't. Like, we're going to, so they need some guys to step up, because it's just really hard to see a lot of, like, legit, like, NFL players, like, kind of emerging here. They're just trying to make the best of what they got. And that means a very small margin for error, and they are just committing so many errors. But my advice to the listener is hobbies. I think that's the Omaha Zoo is amazing.
There
still
can't
is.
be a lack of corn mazes out by you, Max.
Corn mazes, apple picking, pumpkin
Fall
patch
activities.
this fall.
Yankee candle scent.
I mean, I think it's diversifying your investment in your weekends a little bit.
So here's the thing about Nebraska from my standpoint. Dave said that we should shoot them into the sun last night, and maybe we will after. But I don't feel like if Nebraska didn't commit all the mind-numbing errors that you just mentioned, that they wouldn't have won anyway. So, like, that's not the thing that cost them the game. I think Colorado was just a better football team than them. Yeah. But I just feel like it would be easier for a Nebraska fan to embrace the build if they would have just lost 38-24, played a hard, tough, fought game, ran the ball well, and just didn't have the athletes yet to match up. I think it's the carryover of the Frost trauma that makes this so hard to swallow, because nobody anticipated that Nebraska was going to come out and win 10 games. I thought there was a chance that with the talent that they had on their roster that they could overperform our thought process, but it's not losing. It's not being, the rule tear to the studs rebuild process, what he's done at multiple programs already. That's the hard part. The hard part is, when are we going to shake the humiliation of these awful errors?
You'd rather just lose a different way, right? I mean, let's just be honest. Just like you just try to, you would just be encouraged by, man, this team is really physical, and they don't, and they give a ton of effort, and they don't have the enough juice, but they're trying, right? Like, that would be encouraging to people. And I think that you're right, Ari. I mean, I think if you flip a couple of those things, the final score is probably like 36-20, 36-24, something like that.
But
it wouldn't have been right, but it wouldn't have been like humiliating.
Yeah. So it's
but
just
I also don't think this Nebraska team, like, just from going to the press conferences a little bit and stuff like that, like, this is not like an overconfident, like, shit talking group. Like, they know that this is a pretty uphill thing, and it's so in that way you kind of just, like, feel bad for them. I mean, it's just it's been a very humbling start.
Michael Barkley put this perfectly.
If they need a new analyst or something.
Did you see the Michael Barkley comment here? It says it may be year 1 for Matt Rule, but it's year 10 for the fans. and I do feel that. And Sam, I think you're in here right now listening live. We certainly appreciate your participation. It was great to hear your voice, and happy to have you on the show. And I just want you to know that I'm with you, bud. I'm with you. And also, you can take up gambling, and then you can feel pain in a whole new way.
You got to go over to Council Bluffs, which Ari spent some time at. It's not legal in our state, but you can cross the river and get some stuff done there.
Council Bluffs, I went to once when I was covering an Ohio State game at, it must have been Nebraska.
Yeah.
And I hit a royal flush on digital blackjack. I mean, not digital poker, and I didn't have to keep any cards. It just dealt me the royal flush, and that was one of the best highlights of my gambling career. Go pump a few $1,000 in there and see if it happens for you.
I remember you were coming to town for this Nebraska Ohio State game, and I was like, can't wait to hang out with you on Friday. And you're like, no, buddy, I'm going to the casino.
Did I do that? Really?
Yeah. You and Bill were not coming through Lincoln. You had.
I believe being dealt a royal flush is just called hiring Kirby Smart, the one good Saban assistant.
All right, guys, let's go to the next one.
This is George from Denton. And so my question is, so if Oregon State and Washington State win their lawsuits to become sole directors of Pac-12, how petty can they get with it? I mean, do you think they can just declare themselves the Pac-12 championship game participants, willy-nilly ban the rest of the Pac-12 from the playoff ineligible, or even go, no, full code red and just order refs to start playing league-breaking games? All right, good work, guys. Thanks for my call. Bye.
I think my favorite part of this is that the short answer to his question is yes, actually, for 2 years. I will let Max, you've done more realignment than I have, but they can still be the Pac-12 and a recognized conference for 2 years, correct? Without 8 members in 24 and 25. I don't think anybody wants to do that. They also, let's not forget, don't have a television contract, so they could maybe broadcast their games on Twitch, or maybe they can borrow the Until Saturday YouTube feed. We would welcome them.
Are we sure we would get more numbers, though?
We'll see. Ari's out here trying to get canceled, but no, we're
would I get canceled for that? I'm just making a funny joke.
In Corvallis and Pullman, you probably would, but no,
I think you need to also hijack the Pac-12 network, and like in the summer, SEC network will do like, oh, it's Georgia Day, it's Kentucky Day. Just have every other just switch off days. Not today's Washington State Day.
Just air the Oregon State upset of USC 100 times every day, like Texas used to air the Rose Bowl win on Longhorn Network every day at like 11 a.m.
When the Pac-12 is running Pac-12 commercials, what are they doing that for?
I mean, you got to air something. I don't know. I mean, for the 15
Who's
people watching it, it's well, I think they are. I think the schools are. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Every time I have seen a Pac-12 like commercial during games, though, this year, it's been like, it's a weird dynamic. But
it'd be like Blockbuster running ads for the one location in Bend, Oregon.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, legitimately.
Did you guys see the post from the Pac-12's official Twitter account sharing the updated top 25?
No,
I'm from 3 hours ago. It was the most mailed-in tweet I've ever seen. It was literally just like they just typed the names on a thing and screenshotted it and tweeted it. Here we go. Here's the tweet. No edit. Took him a second.
We gotta get Hayes Fawcett in on the game.
So, somebody in that office is in a meeting just being like, what are you talking about? Why would I spend my time on this? Like,
I mean, it would be a pretty good job to be the social media manager at the Pac-12. If I were the person running that Twitter account, I would scorch the earth with that thing. Can you imagine the potential?
There's some real potential there,
talking there that we're just like, what are you going to do? Cancel me? I would go crazy right now.
Like
so
McLovin drilling holes a little bit, you know?
Yeah, the first time USC loses, just put the final score graphic up and just say, "Oh no," and just lowercase.
Yeah. Voicemails are hitting hard. You guys want to do the next one?
Let's.
Hey, it's Dustin in Dallas, lifelong A&M fan. Am I eternally cursed to never go better than 8-4 after that crap show against Miami, or is there actually hope for us? I mean, we just got dominated. Both lines thought we had the talent on at least the defensive line and couldn't get any pressure on Van Dyke. Is there any hope for us, or are we forever destined to never go better than 8-4? I call you guys. Hope y'all can answer it on the show. Love you guys. Y'all are keeping me sane. But not a lot of hope for us Aggies down here. Thanks. Bye.
I just don't know the proper way to internalize what happened, but it feels like a really, really, really bad loss for them.
I'd just like to point out real quick to continue what we were talking about. I'm guessing there were some Nebraska fans who would say that in 2014, right? Are we destined to just win 8-9 games a year? So just remember, it can always get way worse than the plateau that you're frustrated to be stuck on.
I'm a big bites of the apple guy. It's like, I know we've seen it, but we have not seen A&M be this talented and this well-funded and this everything that you need to be successful. If you just keep pushing it in the middle, at some point, something has to break. And I get all the Jimbo criticism, but I think my hot Jimbo take is that the talent that he has given you and the way that he is recruited is worth a lot of the game day complaints, because I'd rather, like, listen,
have a chance.
Yeah, it's like you were a lot more exciting under Kevin Sumlin, but that was not a program with a real solid foundation. And you know, I think judging the foundation of A&M's program is a bit of a Rorschach test under Jimbo Fisher. But ultimately, you have a ton of talent. And I think if you have a bunch of talent, I mean, Ari, I'm talking your language here. It's the hardest thing to do is acquire talent. And he's doing that as good, if not better, and more consistently.
Well, the thing that's got to be the most frustrating part about this whole thing is that you would think at the very least that A&M's defensive line would have showed out in that game. Like there were certain elements of the
You would think.
physicality, the size, and the speed that they've recruited onto that roster that should have shined through. And I don't think that Miami, and though Mario Cristobal is probably number one thing to fix when he got there would be the physicality up front. There are certain things that should transcend coaching and scheme, and that should just be like athleticism shining through and making plays to bail out coaches. I've watched a lot of teams with a lot of talent in my life just get bailed out by really good players who do amazing things. And I just don't know if I've seen enough A&M players doing amazing things in the games that I watch of theirs. And I don't know if that's a coaching issue. I don't know if that's an evaluation issue, but there's a certain look to it. And I think that like the whole idea of the eye test is something that I think drives a lot of people crazy, especially when it's used as a criteria from the playoff committee, during conference calls to explain rankings. But we all watch football and we all know what it looks like when a team has it. You can see it, you can sense it, you can feel it. I felt it on Saturday in the Alabama-Texas game. And I can't remember the last time I watched an A&M game where I was like, holy shit, this team's got it. And they beat Alabama a few years ago with Haynes King, and that was really exciting.
Zach Calzada.
Shit. Yeah, that's a good catch there.
Am I going to get yelled at if I say that game felt a little fluky at the time?
Probably. I mean,
okay, I'm just saying.
Well, if anything for you to try to win back a single Alabama fan to listen to the show, please feel free.
I was nice to them earlier. I was very nice to Alabama fans earlier. I said they're a quarterback away from being dominant. That's as nice as I can.
I think A&M has a a quarterback. That would be
they do.
Away from
that helps.
Yeah,
that helps.
They've got a quarterback. It seemed to me, and I was very curious with this one because you think back to the last year of Kevin Sumlin and that UCLA game and the way that they blew that. I mean, the Sumlin era was over after that season opener in LA.
Yes.
We didn't seem like we had a big Tony Busby moment last night or today. It seemed like I mean, believe me, I pulled up Texags just to see like what the vibe was. It seemed, especially after the Texas one, just to see how it was going over there. It seemed way more frustration about DJ Durkin, specifically coming off that game. It seemed like there's people are willing to let this play out a little bit more. Obviously, there's some really big SEC games coming up for them, but I feel like we may look back at that. I mean, they're still so talented, but we may look back at that one as maybe a bit of a turning point. But honestly, guys, maybe this is not naive of me to say, but I think that this talent acquisition can be maintained by another coach. Where A&M is at now.
In the NIL era, maybe.
I give him plenty of credit, right? I mean, pulling off the number one class is incredibly difficult, but I think if they were to hire the right coach next year, I think they will still recruit at a top 5 to 10 level.
Who is that though, Max? Like
Jeff Traylor? I mean, I don't know. Like I believe me, I don't have the list in my drawer here. There'd be a lot of people that would want it though. I promise you that in terms of the cash reserves over there. Like I think people know that is if you can build that thing in a way that's not dysfunctional, I'm
with you, man.
You should have a 12-team playoff contender all the time.
I wasn't huge on A&M coming into this year. I thought they had some upside. I wasn't all in on the they finally got it. But I did feel like, Max, after last year, some of the portal exits, the idea that these guys are not into it. It did feel a little bit like addition by subtraction in terms of culture and fixing it. And I felt like, you need to take care of business against this Miami game. And I think the one thing, and I mentioned this last night, the one thing, because I'm holding on to 65% of my A&M stock. I didn't have a ton before the season, but I'm holding on to a lot of it.
But you can't sell it now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
What are you gonna do? Sell it from low? Would you have some gains you need to offset?
I don't think another 5 and 7.
You mentioned on the show you got rid of your Virginia Tech stock, and I'm like, you must have taken a bath on that. Like, when did that happen?
No, I sold every bit of it before the season. Exactly. No, I think ultimately,
still,
that's a penny stock. I mean, okay, all right. Sorry to hear that.
Did you buy a Subway sandwich?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think there's a chance that Miami's just really good. And maybe Texas A&M is still a 9-10 win team. I don't think that's the case. But if we're looking up here in November and they're, 8-2, I'm not going to be fainting, being like, oh,
When Dave put you on the spot, Max, and said, "Who should that coach be?" I would have just gone, Dion.
Prime. That's the auto answer now. Yeah. I mean, he's coaching the most interesting team in college football history, so why not?
It's true.
Why not?
I think I might have won Max over a little bit. He disagreed with my column, but I think I won him over a little bit this weekend. He got to experience the circus from the inside, and it is indeed a circus. This team, this whole situation.
I know that looks like they're running NBA Summer League up there.
I don't doubt that your next 5 columns this week will win me over too.
I do have a column running tomorrow, Max.
Of course,
it's in your honor.
Is it about Colorado?
Yes.
God,
it's about actually Matt Rule in Colorado, and Dion is inexplicable, indefinable, but clear skill at finding disrespect at all corners, and how it's very stupid, but also it's definitely working.
So should I just be like, Dion, you suck, and then have it like,
I think you just made the next Colorado hype video, Ari.
And then I got to show up and get into a verbal confrontation.
Your face is going to be on their locker room tomorrow morning.
Colorado is not ready for the Rams or something like that. Just give them something. Yeah.
I got to say, guys, A&M's defense was the problem. We're going back to that for a second, obviously. But A&M's offense didn't light the world on fire either. I mean, I think 2 of their touchdowns came after bad miscues on special teams, and I just don't know. Well, I guess like Dave likes to say, we'll see when it comes to like how good Miami is. But I felt like that was a bad loss, and I don't know if we're at the point now where we've got to kickstart the Jimbo discussion again. Hopefully, we can push that off for a few more weeks. But I thought that was a bad one. Okay, let's go to, I believe might be the final voicemail, but hopefully not. I can listen to these all day.
Good evening until Saturday, gentlemen. So excited for Texas. Up here in the Okanagan, wine country, sipping on a victory. Way to go, Quinn Ewers. Glad to see that defense absolutely dominate. Let's go. Where do we go from here? Hook 'em!
What was that last part?
Hook 'em. I had to Google the Okanagan. This is in British Columbia. We have a Canadian listener hitting us up. I had not heard of this before.
He said, where are we going from here? I think the 3 of us should go to Canada. I think that's
I think awesome. We'll go to the Okanagan, the wine country for week 3, baby. I'm at home. I bet he's got a big TV. Let's go.
Big wine guy, Ari?
You see that pause? That was me Googling what is further than the moon.
What?
He said, where do we go from here? They're already on the moon.
Fair enough.
You should sell. Yeah. You know what, buddy? That's why you didn't buy any Texas stock at the beginning of the year. You'd be sitting on some fat gains right now. I've got a whole bunch and I can do whatever I want with it.
All right. What are the Texas playoff odds currently, or the national championship odds? Have those been up?
I haven't looked yet, but before the season started, Texas's national title odds were 22-1, and I thought that was absolutely must consider when it comes to that. The Heisman Trophy odds are the only ones that I have up on my page right now. I'm actually locked out of my page after the weekend I've had, but
they've disavowed Ari Wasserman.
Yeah, no, it's been a battle for Sunday. It was a bad day. It was a sad day,
Ari, when would you if Texas is trading at an all-time high right now, right? And they are, right? They're in the AP top 5 and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Would you sell before Big 12 play? Would you sell before Red River? Like, what do you think?
Well, no, because you want to know why I wouldn't sell, because I think that the Alabama win now gives them a mulligan. I think they can lose one. So for me, I feel like I would sell it in the playoff potentially to seeing how, but I think that things would have to go very wrong for them to lose 2, right? I mean, they're going to lose maybe one. Maybe they'll lose one of the Dave Ubbin grab-ass games. But
for the record, I'd like to go on the record saying I think another Red River punking is coming. When they're going to get up for OU and they're going to show up for OU, I think that game might get not as ugly as last year, but ugly again.
So you think that they will lose?
Texas going 9-3 though.
I mean,
Yeah,
we got
Dave.
Kansas, Kansas State, Texas Tech. There's a lot of teams that are capable of beating Texas.
Texas is 10-1 to win the championship, thanks to our buddy Vaughn.
Okay.
The Big
Which is
12 or
half.
the CFP?
I think it has to be the CFP because it was 22
Yeah, they're probably like
yeah.
plus 150 to win the Big 12. I'm guessing.
They were they were favored to win the Big 12 before the season started. So they're
Really?
definitely
So they're probably
like
Dave.
now? What's your Texas record projection right now? Updated record projection?
I mean, probably 10-2, 11-1.
Okay,
maybe.
so let me read this to you. So you think they're going to punk Oklahoma? You just said that, right? So we're going to use that against you. They are playing Wyoming, Baylor, Kansas, Houston, BYU, Kansas State, TCU, Iowa State, and Tech. Okay. That's the remainder of their schedule. You think they're going to drop 2 of those games?
1 or 2. Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's a lot of let's go down this list here, okay? Baylor, capable of beating you, and it's in Waco. Kansas, absolutely.
Did you watch Baylor play football the first 2 weeks? Or
I did, Ari, but I'm just saying they're capable.
Okay.
They're capable.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me that if Texas lost to Baylor, you'd be like,
this Texas team, yes, that's what I'm
happening?
trying to drive into your head.
All right,
I'm trying to drive that into your head. Yeah.
That's fine.
Last year's Texas team, no, but this one, yes, I would be very, very surprised. Yeah.
This team's played 2 games, just for the record. But
yeah, 2 very good games. Or 1, and also Rice just beat Houston, so maybe Rice is a juggernaut we don't know about.
Maybe. Now that's an interesting thought, actually. KU absolutely can beat them. Oklahoma, yes, they can beat them. I don't think they will. I think Texas will be up and show up for that game, but they can beat you. BYU, I'm not so sure about. Kansas State, absolutely. TCU, yes. Iowa State, I'm not so sure. Texas Tech could beat you in theory. Those are that's more losable games
than
Bama usually plays.
Is annoying me. When do you start
No, I just think you
open your eyes, man.
They can lose these games.
He was still giving me all the hits last night. Sark has never won 10. The history of Texas matters. It was just
you're telling me
all
Texas
out.
Can't lose those games. That it's not possible that they could lose to Baylor, Kansas.
But you're
State,
using analysis from the past to project forward.
No, I'm not. Those teams are functional. Those teams are fine. Those are quality.
So go down teams. Georgia's schedule and find all the functional teams that are playing and figure out how many. There's not very many.
There's 3, I think. That could
I'm not
beat
saying
Georgia.
that Texas is Georgia, but
you literally
it's disrespectful to watch what they did last night and sit there and act.
You're literally saying Texas is Georgia, and that I will see on Georgia's quarterback situation. I want to see Georgia play a team with a pulse before we anoint them again. But you literally are comparing Texas to Georgia. The idea that you can't even entertain that Texas could lose to some of these 7-8 win Big 12
Of course,
teams
I can entertain that they could lose a single game. What I won't entertain is the notion. You said 2. That's a bit different than 1.
I said 1 or 2.
I'm just enjoying this. This is
and then
next. So who are you leaning toward here? I mean, what is your thought process on this whole thing?
I think a Texas Kansas Big 12 title game would be incredible. Let's go.
Yes.
Let's
I will say that watching Jalen Daniels on Friday night, I don't think we talked about this on the show last night, was one of the most entertaining games that I've seen. I the way that he can juke out 8 people at the same time, he is a special player, and I think Alabama would have won last night if he were their quarterback.
Ari, here's a question for you. Ari,
is
Jalen Daniels better than anyone on Texas's offensive roster?
Maybe
their whole offensive roster. What do you mean?
The thing you're saying is
if you plop Jalen
better than their
Daniels
worst walk-on. What do you mean?
No, if you plop Jalen Daniels on Texas's roster right now,
is he the best offensive player?
That's their best offensive player.
Well, let me ask you this.
Clearly, we're stumped because we love Jalen Daniels. Yeah.
I think yes.
Here's the way you have to couch that question, Dave.
But I think he's best. Yes.
This is the question: does Jalen Daniels play quarterback better than Xavier Worthy plays receiver?
Yes.
What are we doing here?
Okay, I can't. I don't think that you're
in game of his life, and we're already subbing him for Jalen Daniels in some weird hypothetical here.
Jalen Daniels disrespect. This is Jalen Daniels disrespect.
Xavier Worthy is unquestionably a top 5 receiver in the country now, right?
And AD was just as good, if not better, last night. I will say this: I wrote this last year after the game in Austin. It's totally clear now after watching both of these. Texas absolutely gets up for this game, gives the effort of their life, has the game plan of the year, right? They probably spent the whole summer on it, right? So I do think it is still fair to question, like, they have to take every opponent seriously going forward here. They have to give this kind of physical effort every week. It can be a little bit different in how they go about it, right? That is going to be the question of Texas, is just the consistency, because I think their depth is going to be pretty solid. They're going to have some setbacks here, but I think the depth's pretty good for this team. It is going to be, though, like, just that 11 a.m. kick in that road game you don't care about, that, oh crap, it's close to halftime. What do we do?
Think that with the team that they have, a lot has to go wrong for them for a long period of time for them to actually lose a game. There might be a game where they don't play well and it's close in the third quarter, but a lot is going to have to go wrong for them to lose. And the thing I like the most is
they lost at home to Kansas in year 1, and they just beat Alabama on the road in year 3. So I would say it's come a pretty long way under Sark.
Don't use facts at all to discuss this, because it's go read the comments on the column I wrote. It's crazy. You got Texas fans doing this, and you have everybody saying what Dave says, and it's just like, I can't have a representative of the comments
Max,
on the podcast.
I'll tell you what I told Ari last night. Myself, and I think a lot of people, respect Texas. They just don't trust them in the same way that you trust Alabama and Georgia, that you're going to show up every week. It's just that simple. I respect Texas. They're a very good team. On paper, at their peak, that's a national championship caliber team. I just don't trust them to show up every week.
I just don't understand what they would have to do other than win out to earn the respect or the thought that they.
I think they would have to beat a team better than Alabama, because Dave doesn't have a ton of respect for this Bama team.
That's, quite frankly, there's a little bit of that too. I don't think this Alabama team is.
I can't do this shit anymore. Either. Let's go to the next question. This is mortifying.
Texas needs to make a call and get a top 3 team on the schedule, because
Dave, why don't you take a lap for this last
segment? Move the needle for Dave.
Go down to Tallahassee and beat Florida State, and then I will be singing Texas's praises.
Dave, do you need any tape or like nails and hammers so you can put up your LSU banner, or do you want to go to the next question?
I think we're good. We can go to the next one.
Okay, that sounds good.
I'm still smiling over the 72 points they put on the board yesterday. Anyway, go ahead.
Sorry, you're doing a great job, Dave. Great job. This is John in Kansas. I got to talk about Jeff Lebby, offensive coordinator, Oklahoma. The dude is a complete and utter disaster. I sat through all of last year, 2 games this year, and I can't take it anymore. He does not know game management. He has no idea how to call plays. And to top it all off, he has his father-in-law, Art Briles, on the field after the game wearing OU stuff, and it just can't happen. Brent has to fire this moron tomorrow. Boomer sooner.
I will say, I think his opinion, it's a scalding take. I think his opinion is a lot closer to the consensus opinion from Oklahoma fans based on what I saw last night than an outlier. Beyond the on-field stuff, I mean, we don't need to belabor Oklahoma's 2022 season. We did enough discussing that in the offseason. And I think all I will say is nobody's asking Jeff Lebby to completely disassociate from Art Briles, but there's a difference between disassociating and changing your Instagram picture to something from last night after the AD, Joe Castiglione, one of the most respected figures in college athletics, calls it out and says, we had discussed this. There were some boundaries. There's a difference between dissociating and doing that and having him on the field wearing team gear. Like, go meet up at Benihana after the game. That's
at Benihana. Yeah. That's
I
right.
think this is, it's rubbing it in people's faces, especially if there was sort of handshake agreement that you're not going to do this with Joe C beforehand.
I actually was thinking about this a lot, and just seeing the reaction to the Briles stuff last night and this morning. We talked about it a little bit last night, Dave, but honestly, I think there's the part that maybe you guys can help me understand this a little bit better, not to put you on the spot, but I think there's a nuance to, we want Jeff Lebby to be our offensive coordinator who makes $1.9 million a year, but we want to disavow Art Briles. Like there's a nuance there that I can't say I fully understand. Like it's always been well known. Art Briles is his father-in-law. It's kind of, I thought the statement from Joe Castiglione last night was very strong, but I guess it's like, what did we think was going to happen? Like,
right.
If it's, I mean, obviously Art Briles is radioactive in the college coaching business. That is still the case. If him showing up in an Oklahoma shirt is that problematic, then like, why did you hire Jeff Lebby in the first place?
Yeah,
I guess.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like, it seems like, and obviously part of that is Brent Venables at the start of a new job has a ton of leverage. If that's the guy he wants, it's kind of hard to tell him, hey, don't do that. But it's like, it's sort of like, to me, kind of feels like Oklahoma's trying to reap all of the benefits of a Briles offense with like none of the other stuff that comes with like a relationship to the Briles name and stuff. And I just kind of don't, I don't really get that. You see where I'm coming from? Like, it's just
could have called Sean Lewis.
Briles adjacent. Yeah. I mean, it's like, did you really think it was like impossible that this was going to happen at some point?
You make that decision with your eyes open, is what you're saying, and they did.
Yeah. I think so. I don't think it takes these days. It takes a lot of commitment to hire these guys that were connected to that time in Waco, you know. And so, I'm not saying this to defend Jeff Lebby, but honestly, I was a little bit surprised by it, and just the reaction to it, and especially like the fire him tomorrow, because everyone has known about this connection, and I understand it was a frustrating game against SMU, and our Briles, if they all agree to that, he shouldn't be around there, but they signed up for this.
Yep. Well, guys, we made it through an hour, and I think we did a pretty good job. So the next episode that you will have on our feed is Max and Sam. Richard Johnson on the show with you guys on
That's right.
Tuesday.
Big guest.
The guy who was sitting next to me
in
the press box who didn't mention this.
2022 Edward Ashoff Rising Star Award winner. Shout out to,
very
Richard.
bright young mind. It was a pleasure to sit next to him at the game, and I'm super excited to listen to that podcast. Max and Sam show is a must listen to every week. I think it's super enjoyable and two of my favorite people to work with. Thank you guys so much for your participation in the Sunday Sound Off show. You know, as we get further into the year, it's just going to get more and more spicy. People are going to get more and more fired up, and you know, hopefully you guys take the next 6 or 7 days to just, you know, understand and accept that Texas is good. I think David might need a little extra time, but he certainly will get there eventually once he sees the wins pile up.
If they lose, Ari, I'm going to be insufferable on that episode.
I'll just be wrong, you know, like you were with LSU. I just took longer for me to be wrong than you.
For the record,
you know,
still early. It's September.
Yeah, it would be funny if LSU did make the playoff this year somehow. But honestly, had a really good time with you guys. Love the crew that we have here on Sundays. I love the participation. I feel like these listeners who are here on the chat are the day ones. They're the ride or dies. And the fact that we can get you guys into the show, your voices, it means the world to us. So again, thank you very much. Listen to the Max and Sam show on Tuesday. We'll have the full coverage of shows that you guys expect all week. And of course, we'll be right back at this next week. Be sure to leave a 5-star review on the show if you wouldn't mind. If you want to leave a question with the 5-star review, we will get to answer that on the show. If you're listening to this in podcast form, I would love to watch us on YouTube and see our beautiful faces. The link to the show, the link to the YouTube channels in the show's description. You can like, share, all that stuff there too. Helps us get awareness out for the show. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching. That was Until Saturday.
See y'all.